Well, hello everybody. It's Wednesday. I hope you're all having a blessed day. Just gonna get on here real quick and talk about some of the things happening in the world. Things are escalating as I assumed that they would. Um, we have things going on with we talked about it actually a couple days ago, and the news is catching up to it about the B-2s and the fleets being transferred to Diego Garcia, and from there probably into the Persian Gulf. But because of the numbers, I want you to think a couple of things. Okay, first of all, Diego Garcia is a very small island area. Guam is another, it's pretty much our only warm weather port now because we closed down the Philippines. I mean, we do have some assets in Singapore and in Japan and Korea, but nothing like what the Philippines was for us and what Guam is. The problem with it being so consolidated is it makes it a really easy target. And so now we have a whole lot of assets in Guam getting ready for the anniversary of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, I think it is. And then we also have a whole bunch of assets in Diego Garcia. And we don't have a whole lot of B-2 bombers, the stealth bombers. And so we have like eight of them there, I think. So it really is concerning to me that we're doing that because it makes it really easy for China and or Russia to just take out all of that assets in one, similar to Pearl Harbor. Now, the other thing that came to mind is yes, it is a route to the Persian Gulf, and I do think some of those assets are going there for sure. However, things with China and Taiwan have not stabilized, and it would not surprise me at all if we are sending some assets that direction as well, or to Korea. Because again, that is not stabilized. The North is still poking the South, and there's still a lot of animosity going on. And so I will not be surprised if we have war on several fronts. And don't forget the southern border. There's a lot of activity going on down there. And we talked about this before that when you take financial assets away, that's why sanctions are always one of the first things they do. People get irate, I mean, you take your allowance away from your kid, they get upset. You take the credit card away from your spouse, they get upset. Think what you're doing when you have cartels that have they don't value life, they value money. When you talk about, even Europe, right? We're not sending the assets anymore to Ukraine. We're not sending the assets to these other countries, and their piggy banks are empty. So they're upset. And so there was some news today about something called Operation Sandbag or Sandstorm. And let me look what it is. Anyways, it is talking about Europe basically not using the dollar anymore and just cold turkey Operation Sandman, I'm sorry. It's no longer a whisper, it's a warning and only okay, so what they're going to do is every nation that dumps a dollar weakens America's grip. Every swap line denied is another nail in the coffin. And the illusion is gone. So they're talking about all at once, quietly, no headlines, no nothing, just everybody dropping the dollar and going to bricks or something else. And they are, I think I shared it with you. In October, the European Union wants to go totally digital with their own euro currency. And that's as of October. So that's not that far away. That's what, 7 months. And so this may be a prelude. It may be coming soon. They may switch over and then do that as a save the day, right? Hegelian dialectic that let's create a problem by taking everything off the dollar. Oh, we're even more unstable. Well, here's a digital currency to fix everything. And the big thing with digital currencies is that it goes along with a social credit score, and it gives them a very easy way to manipulate and control you. If they don't want you eating meat, you can't spend money on meat. If they think you've been driving too much, they won't allow you to buy gas. If they think that, and with electric cars, they literally just turn your cars off. So there's a lot of ways they control people through this. if you're talking out about policies, or you're not in line with their curricula of, DEI and LGBTQ and all of the other alphabets that they like to use, then they just turn off your money. And it doesn't matter whether you earned it or not. None of that, all of that goes out the window. And what they want to do in this country is go to a um, token thing where everything gets a token value: your land, your car, your food, your life, plants, your livestock, everything has a token value. And then you're paid in tokens, and everything is traded in tokens, and there is no dollar anymore. There is no anything. It's just tokens, kind of like when you go to Chuck E. Cheese, right? You can't use real money, it's just tokens. Well, they want to make the whole world Chuck E. Cheese. And that's about how I see it too. It's just, but people are going to buy into it. Okay. So, how soon this is going to happen, I don't know, but I think it's all going to kind of, I think we're seeing a convergence, and I think all of this is going to kind of happen simultaneously, and we're not really going to be able to know where the end is and where the beginning is. I want to talk a little bit about, this, the journalist getting on the signal call. There's somebody in the White House, whether it's Mike Waltz or one of his staffers, it doesn't really matter, that allowed this to happen. You don't make a mistake like that. And I've never used Signal, so I don't know, but there should be a way, like on Zoom, you can see everybody that's on the call. So I would think that there's a way to do that. And then Miss Hillary Clinton got on and said, well, this is just the worst thing. And it's like, well, no, I think Benghazi was worse than that. I think your bleach bit situation and the servers in the basement were worse than that. Pizzagate was worse than that. And people can say Pizzagate doesn't exist. Bullshit. Oops, excuse my French. I'm sorry, that's not very Christian. Baloney. All of that stuff is real. Do not think they're not peddling in child trafficking and child sacrifice. It's out there. It's demonic. She has shown very many propensities towards witchcraft and other occult activities, and I can't say absolutely for sure it's true, but I feel it in my heart that it is, in my spirit that it is. And we need to pray for her. Okay, we're supposed to pray for our enemies, and I pray that she knows our maker. And it's in his hands. Okay, it's not in my hands. I'm not here for judgment. I don't want to be judge and jury. That I've never had a desire to be in that seat. It does not appeal to me whatsoever. I want to help people. I don't want to judge them. So, anyways, so be aware that there's this Operation Sandman in the European Union, and I think it also involves Russia and China. I don't, and even Saudi Arabia. I don't trust Saudi Arabia. And something else that was kind of interesting. If you ever watch Brandon Biggs, he has said for some time that he's had visions of bin Salman as the Antichrist, and an Islamic caliphate that is running the worlds, and that we're bowing to images of him and that kind of thing. And he's seen visions of, in Oklahoma, their state capitals and stuff being turned over to this, and I can see it. Okay. There's in Ezekiel where Saudi Arabia just stands back and says, well, why are you doing this? They're not stopping it. They're just, why are you seeking to plunder and take booty and, rape and pillage? But they're not doing anything. So that's kind of a key. Um, many think that they're from the old Roman Empire. And it's possible. But it's so hard when you look at history and how things have kind of converged and moved apart and converged and moved apart. But I was watching Tom Hughes yesterday, or maybe the day before, and he had one of his favorite guests on from Australia, John. I can't remember his last name. Anyways, he also has an inkling that bin Salman is potentially an Antichrist candidate. And he said that his mother was Jewish. And when you think about what the Antichrist is, he's going to be younger, I think. think he's going to be very charismatic. He's going to be a Mr. Fix It, as Jan Markell would say. You know, he's going to come in and fix everything. People are going to trust him. Um, the Jews are going to trust him. And so when you look at the Abraham Accords, and then now they're investing $1 trillion in the US, so that's getting them favor here, and they have the money and the resources to get favor kind of all over the world. And they're kind of stepping back. They're not stepping on toes, but they're staying involved, and they're working on peace deals and brokering and, that kind of thing. It really does kind of seem, and I believe, if I remember right, he even said that the Temple Mount belonged to the Jews. So there's a lot of indicators there that he is moving in a direction that that's very likely. And I'm not really looking for an antichrist. I'm looking for my Lord Jesus Christ. But I could see that, okay? And when you look at where I was talking to the kids about Edom and Esau, that so when you okay, Edom was a tribe from Esau. And if you remember, God hated Esau, but he loved Jacob, right? Well, when you look where Edom is, it's in part of modern day Jordan and part of Saudi Arabia. Um, it's right at it's along the Red Sea, and it's just southeast of Israel. Let me see if I can pull this up for you. Let me just, try this one. I'll show you right here. Let me see if it'll, when it pulls up. Okay, so here's Israel. Here's Gaza. Okay, Kingdom of Edom is right here. And if you look at it in modern day, of course it's going to do this. So that, okay, in Ezekiel's time, it was considered to extend south into Arabia. And Dedan is modern Al Ula, Medina. So right here, here's Saudi Arabia, here's Israel, and here's Edom. And then Jordan's up here, right? So I think it's possible that, and I don't know that Ben Salman goes back to Esau, but perhaps he does. So anyways, that's very interesting to me. Well, let's see what's going on here. There we go. I'm so bad at this. Okay, so anyways, Um, so that's one thing. So I think we need to really watch what's going on with our troops that are moving to the Pacific. And I was stationed in the Pacific, part of the Pacific Air Force for 3 years. And so, and I had a lot of friends that were fighter pilots. I had a lot of friends that were intel. I was a nurse, but you get to know people. And Guam is very strategic, and so is Diego Garcia. And so when you, like I said, when you look at it in proximity to what's going on with China and the Koreas, that it's very possible, and even Russia, that it's possible that we are staging to go to the Gulf, but also to handle them. And so I will not be surprised if we have a multi-front war breakout. So the other thing, okay, let's talk a little bit about this Signal app business. We talked a little bit about it, but the text from it have been released and there's nothing, top secret in it. However, somebody allowed this to happen. And you don't just get on a call by accident, okay? And from what I understand, this reporter isn't even American, he's Canadian. So I think he needs to be booted out of the country. He got on the call, realized he wasn't supposed to be there, and should have immediately hung up. If you pick up a call, do you remember in the day when there were kind of like party lines and there was somebody else on the line and you're like, woo, hang up, right? Or maybe even somebody else in your family, right? You pick up the phone to call somebody and your mom or dad's on the phone or one of your brothers or sisters. Stay on the phone. You hung it up. I mean, that's just kind of common courtesy. So I hope something happens with that. Um, on the keying and bombing and stuff at Tesla, there's been several accounts now where they have very clear IDs on who these are. Middle-aged women, a young man from Fort Collins, Colorado. They've identified he's actually getting charged with a number of things and he's in jail and he is not being released, which is good. I think, if you, again, I think I've brought up Singapore before. It's one of the cleanest and most beautiful places you'll ever go. Why? Because they are strict. You spit, you're arrested, you go in jail, you get caned. You litter, you get arrested, you get caned. They don't mess around. Well, nobody wants to deal with that. When I first went to the Philippines, they were still doing public hangings on TV. And in Mindanao, which is Muslim, and you don't want to travel there, but if you're caught stealing, they cut your hand off. It's just we are so soft in this country compared to other places around the world. Now, I'm not saying we need to go to that extreme, but I do think we need to come back towards center more and really hold people accountable. And they're damaging other people's property. One person's car that got damaged was looking at a house on in Seattle on First Hill, and they came out from looking at the property and their car was keyed. Another one was a nurse, right? She came out at lunchtime to have her lunch and her car was keyed. These are just working people that were trying to be environmentally friendly, were trying to get a car that was American made, whatever their reasons were, it doesn't really matter. They liked the car. They bought it. It was affordable. It was not affordable. Whatever the case may be. I have a big truck. It's not affordable, but it's the only thing that pulls a trailer. Now, I don't drive it all the time because it's not affordable to drive all the time. I bought a little clunker that, for my day to day, that's old and has lots of miles, but it gets me to and fro. Um, but anyways, just because it's not the prettiest car in the world, I wouldn't want somebody keying it up. It's still valuable to me. It's still how I get to church. It's still how I go to buy groceries. It's still important to me. For others, it may be the only way they can get to work to pay their bills and support their family. And this anger stuff is just out of control. Okay, so but we're fighting against good and evil. We're not fighting against flesh and blood. And these people are at the least tormented by demons, and I think actually possessed by demons. And people are blaming Trump for the signal call. He wasn't on the call. He had nothing to do with it. The only thing he did was hire or select these people for these positions. But from what I understand, it wasn't even Mike Waltz. It was one of his staffers, and that staffer needs to be booted. And truly, I think Mike Waltz needs to be reviewed and maybe put through a lie detector because there's something about him I don't trust. Maybe he's the greatest guy in the world. I don't know much about him. So I really shouldn't be commenting, but when this whole thing came out, it was kind of like, I don't know, where did this guy come from? I mean, I know he was in Congress before, but he kind of came out of nowhere, and that's a pretty important job. And I think there's other people that I would trust in that position more. Why not bring Michael Flynn back? He could do the job. I don't know that he could get confirmed, but he certainly could do the job. And he's very, very knowledgeable. And I think he's a good negotiator. Um, and he's honest. But so that's enough on that. Um, if you guys have feelings on that, leave a comment because I want to hear what other people think. Um, so then let's go. Okay. Let's look at some of the news. So Marco Rubio is speaking out and saying that that was a big mistake, including journalists in the war chat. So it sounds like things are happening. And, yesterday Trump was saying he's a good man, but I got a feeling Mike Waltz is on his way out. A federal appeals court has maintained a temporary block on President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act. Okay, these courts really need to be reined in by President Trump. And I say that because I'm going to share something here with you. The only court that is really sanctified by the Constitution is the Supreme Court. And the original Supreme Court was kind of an afterthought in its own way. I mean, not really, but it was not seen as important as the presidency and the Congress. And so this is like a 6-minute video, but I really want you to see this.
In other words, all of these lower court federal judges and courts that are stopping our slowdown into the New World Order, none of these courts and none of these judges are even mentioned in the United States Constitution. The Supreme Court, yes, but not these lower court judges. Then why do they exist? They exist because Congress at some point brought them into existence. The Constitution, as I've read to you the relevant parts, allows Congress to
Here,
bring
I'm going to
these
back
lower
this up a
courts
little
into
bit.
existence. Guess what? If
Okay, let's try from here. I'm probably going to get a commercial now.
Take off the mask. After spending nearly 300 days aboard the International Space Station, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams are back on Earth. These two incredible astronauts were only supposed to be up there for 8 days, but because of the Biden administration's lack of urgency, they ended up spending 9 months in space. Joe Biden.
Okay, we'll try this again. Sorry about that.
Elected ruling class trying to stop the decay of evil by a popular conservative Republican president. And so here are some people, House Republicans, saying we're going to investigate these judges, and when we find them to be out of line, we're going to impeach these judges. Now, I would say that's a good start, but there's something more you can do. The impeachment process is very, very difficult. You've got to get a accusation, I guess, of a crime being committed by a majority in the House. And then it's the Senate that hears the evidence and they have to vote for removal of office. I think the number is like 2/3 of the senators that have to vote for removal from office, which is a high legal standard to meet. But there's something much more basic that conservatives in the House can use and can do to keep these rogue judges in in line. And so I want to draw your attention, if I could, to Article 3, which governs the judiciary. Article 3, Section 1 of the United States Constitution. It says this: the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Let me read you one more section here from Article 3. Article 3, of course, is the part of our Constitution that governs our judiciary. Article 3, Section 2 says, in all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. I emphasize the language as the Congress may in Article 3, Section 1, and as the Congress shall make in Article 3, Section 2. In other words, all of these lower court federal judges and courts that are stopping our slowdown into the New World Order, none of these courts and none of these judges are even mentioned in the United States Constitution. The Supreme Court, yes, but not these lower court judges. Then why do they exist? They exist because Congress at some point brought them into existence. The Constitution, as I've read to you the relevant parts, allows Congress to bring these lower courts into existence. Well, guess what? If Congress brought these lower courts into existence, Congress can bring them out of existence. Congress can abolish them. Congress can get rid of them. I mean, they serve under the pleasure of the United States Congress. And if I'm reading Article 3, Section 2, and Section 1 correctly, Congress has the ability to control their jurisdiction. In other words, Congress has the ability to control what kind of cases they hear. And it would be a very easy thing of Congress to say, you can't hear that kind of case anymore. I mean, either we're going to abolish you or get rid of you, or we're going to say, you can hear this kind of case, but you can't hear that kind of case. You know, when the President of the United States is trying to curtail spending to slow down the progress of evil, and you come along and you try to put handcuffs on the President of the United States, Congress can step in and say, guess what? We're going to abolish you, or this is the kind of case you can't hear anymore. In other words, the control of these rogue radical judges that are now coming against the President of the United States are completely under the power and under the control of Congress. And so I appreciate what these two House Republicans are doing in terms of trying to form a task force to root out partisans and to impeach rogue judges. We have to understand that the impeachment process is very difficult. It's very cumbersome. It's only been tried a few times in American history. It's only been successful very few times in American history. And there's another path they can take. And that path is clearly spelled out in Article 3.
So, anyways, that gives you guys a really good idea of an option that I think is very viable. And what I love about it most is that nefarious actors have used the courts and district attorneys and state attorney generals to get their ways. I mean, Soros is well known for buying and paying for the degrees and training of many of these rogue actors, and then they go into, and who knows how they're getting paid after the fact, but I'm sure they are. And he has really corrupted our legal system. And I'm sure there's others besides him. And there's probably some on the right too. I'm not suggesting at all that it's always liberals, it's always the left. I think there's rogue actors out there from other countries. I think there's rogue actors from both sides of the aisle of politics. I think there's just anti-American people out there that are trying to destroy us through evil any way they can. And our founding fathers were very brilliant, and they designed a system that allows for a check and checkmate. And I think if we use this correctly, again, it's another brilliant move because these people think that they had us. They thought checkmate. I have the legal system in a nice little bow, and I'm just going to take these people down. I've already done lawfare against them. I've already um, I was listening to David Rubin talking about, Mar-a-Lago and its value, and that it's 17 acres, and just the acreage alone without any buildings puts it at well over $17 million. And then you add the buildings, and then then when you put more acreages together, it's probably more like 36 million. And then you add the buildings and all the facilities, and now you're up to, many, many more million, if not billion. And so for that judge to say, well, no, this is the value of it, and you're all wrong. I mean, and he lives in Florida. He knows what he's talking about. He's not coming out of, nowhere talking out his behind. And he's also, I would not call a flaming conservative. I mean, he's gay and he's married, and, but I think he's a reasonable person. And he's coming around. He used to be quite liberal, but he's reasonable. And when he looks at the facts, he's like, no, this doesn't add up. And so Trump got charged and convicted on a crime that wasn't even a crime. There was no victim. Nobody didn't get paid. The bank did its due diligence. It gave the money. Trump paid the money back. No harm, no foul. Nobody was trying to screw anything. It was a normal, typical transaction. And again, Trump isn't the one that puts the values on this. He has, attorneys, and he has real estate consultants, and he has all sorts of experts on these kind of deals. He's not the one doing it. Yes, his name is on the corporation. Yes, he is the CEO of the corporation. Yes, in the end, the buck stops there. But he had a lot of experts advising him to do this. So, anyways, off topic. I'm sorry. I do this sometimes. Um, I hope we rein in the courts, okay? I hope Trump gets rid of whoever got that guy on the signal call, because we can't have it, especially if we're going to war here soon. And I think we are. I mean, really, we've already been at war, but I mean, on a larger scale in the Middle East, Ukraine and Russia seem to be settling down. They're talking about no more operations in the Black Sea. They're talking about no more hitting power plants and stuff. Do I think Zelensky will abide by that? No, I think he's as trustworthy as Iran is. Whatever they say they're going to do the opposite. And so I think that it will look like it's petering down, and then it's going to explode again. Okay, it kind of reminds me of wildfires. You think you stomped it out, but the root of the tree is on fire, or the inside of the tree is on fire. The next thing you know, you have a fire again. Um, so just keep your eyes on that. Let's see. As far as the economy, if this Operation Sandman happens before we can get the economy rolling again in the rebuild stage, we might not rebuild. Okay. That's always a possibility. I am not a financial expert, and nor am I really good at reading these kind of things. I mean, I can say that historically owning land has always been a good thing. However, I can also say from my own experiences, if you sell the land prematurely, you can lose a lot of money. I'll give you an example. The first house I bought, I paid $45,000 for. It is now worth over $340,000, 40 years later. Well, that's quite a big return. I sold it for 73,000, after 4 years. So had I just paid it off, which really wasn't that much, right? At 45,000, that's what cars are costing now. I would have made a whole lot of money, plus probably rented it for all those years. And it's a puny little, cracker box house. It wasn't anything special, and the neighborhood actually is not as nice as when I bought. And when I look back at every property I bought, they've all gone up, they've quadrupled easily, all of them. Did I hang on to them? No. I was always kind of in a frantic kind of state, I'll say. So I knew that land was finite. I knew that the value would only go up, but my timing was always off. So I am not giving you any advice here, other than if you own land, you may want to hang on to it. Okay. If if you can have cash on hand, even if the dollar crumbles, it's still going to have value for a while. It's, people don't change overnight. And I would have items that you can barter, and skills that you can barter. If you're a mechanic, if you have healthcare skills, if you have, lawn care skills, if you have skills that people will need, that keeps you keeping, you know, sustenance coming in. Even if there's no money, if you grow food, you can trade it for this, that kind of thing. So I would encourage you to have backups like that. It never hurts. It never hurts to have an extra skill. It never hurts to have more knowledge. Never hurts to have a little extra food around. I'm not saying that you need to go overboard. And really, in the end, don't listen to me, go to the Holy Spirit. Because he's going to tell everybody something different. He may tell you he wants you to move to another state. And if you have a whole bunch of junk moving like that, it becomes a real pain in the rear. He may want you to stay where you are and be a light on the hill. That's up to him. That's not up to me. I don't have that ability to tell you what to do. Um, and also remember, the people that get rich do it when everybody else is losing. So if you're set good, then if things crash, if prices on housing goes down, whatever, that's a good time to pick up because you're buying at pennies on the dollar. Those fire sales are when the richest of the rich have always succeeded. You know, they cause these problems so that they can get rich. Um, and I would say watch BlackRock. They have something like 65% of the land and homes in the US now, or some ridiculous number. I don't know that that's the correct number, but they are actively buying up, buying up, buying up. Um, Bill Gates, of course, is on the move again. Now he's talking about that with AI, there's only going to be three jobs in the future. One is CEOs and creative thinkers. One is counselors and that kind of thing because you need empathy. And the third was artists and creative type because AI doesn't have the ability to be creative. And I'm like, well, that says a lot. He thinks that's how much he think. You know, he talks about being a healthcare guru, and that tells you what he thinks about doctors and nurses. He's saying, well, they don't have critical thinking skills like a CEO does, and they don't have any kind of creative skills. They're not coming up with new and innovative ways to treat you, and they're not empathetic. It's like you obviously haven't been around them. You're a pretty terrible nurse if you're not empathetic, and doctor. And you have to be very good at critical thinking because you're saying, okay, you know, it's not just an algorithm. Yes, we have what we call a differential diagnosis that is very similar to an algorithm, but there's a lot of intuition, there's a lot of personal experience, there's a lot of other things that go into that it's thinking outside the box. I'll give you a really good example. We've talked about, you know, I'm wearing the continuous glucose monitor. And I think I mentioned yesterday that I had a situation where I had some steak and vegetables at lunchtime, and it didn't affect my glucose at all. And later in the day, about 6:30, I was hungry. And normally I would have something like Greek yogurt or fruit or some nut butter. But I was really hungry, and I thought, you know, it's okay to eat two meals a day. It's not like that's a crazy thing. A lot of people do that. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna have leftovers. And so um, I had some steak I hadn't cooked up, and I cooked it up, and I reheated the vegetables, and I ate in the same order that I did at lunch. I had my salad first, and then I had the vegetables um, from the meal, and then the meat. And there was no sugars in there. There was nothing, you know, there was sweet potato, which is a carb and it is a starch, but I ate it last. And by then, you know, I had some apple cider vinegar before I started. So the whole combination should have meant it should have really blunted any glucose response, and it should have been the same as lunch. It was the same meal. In fact, it was about half the size portions. Instead, I had a glucose response up to like 140, which is not high, but it's high for me. It's on the upper end of normal. And I thought, wow, that's really weird. And so I thought, does, you know, insulin have a circadian rhythm? Well, in fact, it does. And so the other thing I notice is I tend to be a little bit higher in the morning, which would be your fasting glucose. And again, not high. I'm talking like 101, 103. But it's not in the 90s or 80s like you would like to see a fasting glucose. Well, there's something called the dawn phenomenon, which is your blood when you get up, your blood glucose rises in preparation to go out hunting and gathering and doing all of that. Well, since that's also my normal pattern, the very first thing I do when I get up is I throw the coffee on the burner and then I go out and I do my horse chores. I feed, or I put them out to the field, and I usually do a little bit of sweeping and stuff while the coffee's brewing. So it's not anything super aggressive, but it is 10 or 15 minutes of walking and exercise and getting moving, okay? Being outside in the sun. And so I think my body with the circadian rhythm, with my normal typical lifestyle, it gives me a little bit a bump up. Not a lot, like I said, 101, 103. And then I usually eat between 11 and 12. So since my body's used to me eating at that, and that is the time when our body that our insulin response is highest, that in preparation for that meal that you went out and hunted and gathered and ate to eat, um, it's already activated, it's already active, it's already preparing. And so I don't see a change in my blood glucose at all. And then, but since I don't usually eat later in the day, now it was still light. I try not to eat after dark. It was like 6:30, so it wasn't super late, but it was later than normal for me. And obviously at that point, my insulin is already starting to wane in preparation for bedtime. And you need your beta cells to rest. It went, whoa, and then it spiked up on my glucose because I didn't have readily available insulin and it took a moment, right? So again, not a high level, but enough that it makes me think I don't like it. Am I even concerned about it? Because every time you have a spike like that, they kind of add together. And we talked about this before. It's kind of like an earthquake, right? When you see swarms, there might be 20 or 30 in a swarm and they might be small, but when you add them together, it equals a bigger quake. Well, it's the same with this. The more that happens, the more your pancreas gets tired, those beta cells get tired, and pretty soon you are insulin resistant. And I don't want that. It's not even just type 2 diabetes, it's also Alzheimer's, it's cardiac disease, it's high blood pressure. And the best way to treat this is to prevent it. So I really want to be aware that this is a phenomena, that there is a circadian rhythm. And then you add cortisol in there, which is our fight or flight, right? Our sympathetic nervous system, and it's going to impact insulin too. So, and then melatonin, right? Because when the sun goes down, then your melatonin's increasing, and that's going to decrease your insulin. So there's a lot of different hormones that are trying to fluctuate in there and maintain equilibrium in your body. What was the value of that for me to learn was that maybe if somebody's having trouble and they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, just changing the time that they eat could prevent them from going over into being a type 2 diabetic or having Alzheimer's or something like that. And when you look at the typical American, they're eating their main big meal between 4 and 8 o'clock at night. Right? When you go out to dinner, you don't typically go out at 2 in the afternoon. In fact, a lot of restaurants aren't even open at that time. However, that's not the best for our health. So it's something to take into account. And I think we need to really watch this. The other thing is, like last night, I didn't sleep well. And so I laid down, I couldn't fall asleep. I got up and I was doing some work and I made some tea that has, ashwagandha and some mushrooms and various things that kind of help you calm, relax and help the parasympathetic nervous system be activated. And that didn't affect my blood glucose at all. And I went to sleep, but it was like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning by then. So I woke up at, I don't know, 7 or 8 and went to the bathroom, and my blood sugar was in the 70s, which is fine, perfect. That means that, the tea helped. I was sleeping okay, but I was still really tired. So I went back to sleep. My glucose spiked. I didn't have anything to eat at that time. Okay. It was, 4 or 5 hours after the tea. So it wasn't the tea, but it was that I got up and I went back to bed, and the body, when I got up, went, oh, time to do that early morning dawn phenomena. And so it went up, and then I went back to sleep, and it was like, well, she's not doing anything. So I just kept going up. So again, we need to be aware of how sleep, how changes in our activity impact that. Now, ideally, your body should. I'm a believer that we should be consistently inconsistent, so our body's kind of always on, responding quickly. That we switch back and forth. But I think I have been cortisol dependent for so long that my sympathetic and parasympathetic is sluggish. it just, and when in doubt, it kicks into cortisol. And that in turn impacts my insulin. Now, again, it's not pushing me into a diabetic state. However, I think it's a precursor to it, and I need to be really aware of it and need to get control of it now before I'm there. And so it supports my philosophy of prevention, and it shows me that these continuous glucose monitors have value for somebody that's not diabetic, because you can um, see problems before they're really, you know, impacting you. And you can see patterns, right? And it's what happens before what happens. And we see that, I'm going to go back to horses because it just really is something that's very clear to me. Often the big train wreck has been happening for a long time in little pieces, right? The horse is pushing past you, you stop, it keeps walking, it's pulling on the lead line, it's not standing still for you. And you just kind of allow it to happen and allow it to happen, and you're not correcting and you're not saying, no, I expect exactly this, nothing more, nothing less. And the next thing you know, the horse runs you over and you get hurt really bad. Well, when did the problem really happen? Did it happen when you got run over, or did it happen for the 3 months before that you were allowing it to be um, rude? I'd argue that it started happening the very first time the horse, um, did something that it knew wasn't right. Like, I got after my guy a little bit today because I was a little late going out because I overslept, and he wanted to get to the field, and he kept, reaching for grass, and he knows better. So the first time he met my lead rope, my timing was pretty good, and he was like, "Oh," but he did it again. So that time he got a little bit bigger. And he looked at me like, "Oh." And the third time he got a really big pop because it should have never gotten to that. Well, let me tell you, after that, he walked very quietly and he did not try and go to get any more grass. And it wasn't personal. I wasn't picking on him, but, and I let it be him that met the resistance and pop on the halter. So it wasn't the lead rope. It was when he got to that point, the knot on his halter would bump his chin. And each time it bumped it harder. So he was absolutely clear that, whoa, I don't want to do this. And then when I went to let him out, I made sure that he stood there quietly while I took that halter off, and he didn't try and turn and run. That he was looking at me, and that he waited till the halter was off and I gave him permission to leave. Because otherwise, I would be encouraging the wrong thing. And it's the same with my glucose. If I don't respond to what I'm seeing, then I'm encouraging my body to be unhealthy. I'm encouraging me to be unhealthy. And health is a gift. It's a gift from the Lord. I don't want to take it for granted. So, um, you know, I'm not lacking. Okay, I don't need to eat at 7 o'clock at night. I just need to plan a little bit better earlier in the day. And so that concept of a smaller eating window, I think, is really, really important. So if you start your eating window at 11, you might want to end it at 4 or 5. If you started at 12, maybe you can go to 6. And then I would vary during that time frame so that your body doesn't get so cyclic that anytime you're out of it, it's reactive. Because it will kind of self prepare, right? Um, but, anyways, I find that fascinating. And we have to do the same in government, right? When you have something that's not working, you need to set the standard and get rid of it. Because if you allow it, then now you're not open to just one mole, you're two or three or five or 10. And there are lots of people still around the administration that aren't in line with making things more efficient and more in line with the law. And like that judge that wants him to hire 16,000 people back, I think that's really, really bad. That is undermining actually the safety of this nation, because there's going to be a fair number of those people that are bitter, and there's going to be a fair number of them that probably were bitter before he even fired them. And it's bad. It's much better that he's bringing in new jobs and that they can move into the private sector. And there once upon a time, government jobs paid less than the private sector. They had maybe better benefits, they had a little bit more security, but they didn't pay as well as private sector. So you were always looking at getting out of government service and into the private sector, and we need to get back to that. So I think that's about it. There's a lot happening in the Middle East. There's a lot happening still in China and Taiwan. We're just not hearing about it. We're moving lots and lots of forces. Don't think the southern border is over, although it is basically, I want to say they said it's down to like 95% of the crossings. Oh, there was another article I saw that was very interesting. There was a Filipino gal that was here and she'd been here for 50 years, but she had failed to get, permanent citizenship. She still had her green card. She was working as a lab tech, but in 2001, she had been convicted of embezzlement. So she is now in holding um, to be deported or lose her green card or go to jail or I mean, but she's going to be there till I think June until they can deal with her. And people are all upset that here she was following the rules, and no, she wasn't following the rules. She kept her Filipino citizenship because her dad had money and land in the Philippines, and the only way she could inherit that was to stay a Filipino. And so she promised him. This is all about money, right? The root of evil, the love of money is the root of all evil. She wanted her do things in the Philippines, so she didn't want to give up her citizenship. So she didn't want to be an American citizen, but she wanted to make the wages here so she could send money back home. Because the wages here compared to there is, night and day. I think I told you when I had my house girl, it was $60 a month. Well, that same house girl here would be, 2000 a month. There's no comparison. And then they're acting like, well, embezzlement's no big deal. Well, I can tell you embezzlement is a big deal. I've been embezzled and it cost me I lost a home, I lost a business, I lost everything because the person put me so far in the rears on payments because they were embezzling every check that went in and they were pretending to send checks out. So I thought all the payments were made on my lease for my business and for my home and for everything else. None of it went out. They were writing checks to themselves. So they were double stealing from me. And I lost just about everything. I mean, if it wasn't for the Lord, I would have lost everything. And they spent a couple months in jail, but it was nothing compared to the pain that it caused. And I've known other doctors that have lost everything. I've known lots of people that, an embezzlement can be hundreds of thousands of dollars and can be just the end of somebody's, you know, family business that might have gone for generations. To say that it's something little just shows how little respect people have for the hard work of others. That's their business, that's their life. And often they have put their home mortgage, they've taken out a second mortgage for that business. They've really pushed things to the limit often to get that business up and rolling. And then when somebody decides that they're going to steal from them, really, really bad. In fact, when I first went into, after this happened, my mentor said, Penny, always have two people count the money because otherwise they're going to steal. And that's a pretty sad state, but I think he spoke truth. So ICE is really clamping down in all sorts of areas, not just the violent criminals, but those and the reason she got caught was because she traveled to the Philippines and was coming back and they checked her status and said, yeah, we have a problem here. Have you ever committed a crime? And she said no. And then they saw that she had. So she lied. So she added insult to injury, right? Now, why did she think she could get away with it? Well, because we have politicians that are constantly lying. And so when you have leaders that are lying, the general people think they can lie too. And again, God says, do not lie. Okay, so I really think we are at a point that staying to the Ten Commandments is important. Will we mess up? Probably, but we should really try hard not to. And we need to keep our head on a swivel because it's going to get more polarized. It's going to get, more, it's going to get more dangerous out there. We're in perilous times. At the same point, I'm going to go back to what I've said before. David said in the Psalms that he's never seen a righteous man forsaken. He's never seen a righteous man beg for food. So God will take care of you. But you got to go to him and say, what do you want me to do? Should I do this? What plans do you have for me? If you don't go to him and ask for him to be involved, he's not going to, and you're probably going to make mistakes. And if he tells you don't do that, don't do it. I can I'm here in Kentucky because he said don't do that, and I went to my daughter and she said, "Oh, mom, it's fine. You're just got cold feet. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine." No, it wasn't fine. So listen to him. He does forgive you, but you go around the mountain again, and so that instead of 12 days, it's 40 years. That's a big difference. Okay, and that's a lot of extra hard work that I don't think I had to do. But because I was disobedient, here I am. Now, did I purposely go out to be disobedient? No, but I still was. And he says that more than a sacrifice, he wants your obedience. So you see, it's really important. So on that, let's end. I hope you have a very blessed day. Watch Diego Garcia. Watch Guam. Watch um, the Persian Gulf. I will be back on tomorrow or later today if something really crazy happens, God willing. If you're not saved, it's as easy as ABC. First, you admit you're a sinner in need of a Savior. Then you believe that Jesus is that Savior and that He lived, died, and rose again after 3 days to pay for your sins. And then with your mouth, confess Jesus to be Lord of your life and ask Him to come into your life and to take control of it. And then the Holy Spirit will come and live in you. He will guide you. He will counsel you. He will comfort you. You will never be alone. And at that point, you are truly born again. And don't forget that part of that is repenting from your sins. So, as much as you can, you go to God and you say, I'm sorry I did XYZ. You're not going to remember every sin you did, but you try and cover right? And then you don't do them again. You do, repentance means to do an about face, metanoia. You walk away from it. And the Holy Spirit will help you so that you can, whether it's an addiction, whether it's pornography, whether it's adultery, whatever it is, you have to commit yourself to living God's way and let Him help you do that. You cannot have one foot in the world and one foot in the kingdom. It doesn't work. That's called lukewarm. And in the letter to the Laodicean church, Jesus said, "Oh, how I wish you were hot or cold, but you're not, so I'm going to spit you out. I'm going to vomit you out of your mouth, my mouth." He does not want a lukewarm church. You need to be on fire for Him. And if you think about it, do you want to marry somebody who says, "Well, I think I love you, but I kind of love this guy over here too"? No. Ladies, do you want a man that says, "Well, I think you're really hot and I'd like to sleep with you, but I kind of have this other woman on the side"? Ooh, you don't want to be second choice. You don't want to share. That's no. Well, he doesn't want that either. He wants to be the Lord of your life. He is King of Kings. He is Lord of Lords. He wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to talk with you. He wants to be with you. He wants you to be with him. And he doesn't want you to be with him because you have to, but because you choose to. And then it has to be 100%. So, it's the most important decision you'll ever make. He is coming again soon. I think we have 50 years max. He could come for the rapture of the church sooner than that. And, this year is very likely. It could be another 4 or 5 years. I don't think it'll be past 2030, to be honest with you, for the rapture, but it could be. I'm not a prophet, but he does give me inklings of bewares, okay? And he does talk to me. And, like he said, he kind of gave me this inkling on Diego Garcia that it's not just about the Gulf. Okay, so keep an eye on it. I don't know what's going to happen though. He doesn't give me details. you know, we know in part, we see in part. And my part is a little tiny, tiny, tiny piece. And how relevant it is, I don't know. But it's worth watching. I do worry though that, if they totally just did a major bombing of Guam or Diego Garcia, we lose a lot of assets that are really hard to replace quickly. So that is a concern for me. Um, Anyways, have a very blessed day. I love you all. Like, share, subscribe, because it really does make a difference in getting the word out to people. And, there's people out there to be saved. It's a way to be part of the ministry without you having to go be a foot soldier. And the internet can do amazing things if we allow it to do its things. I don't know how much longer we're going to have it. I think at some point it'll be used for evil, but we can still use it for good right now. So, subscribing is a big deal. It helps a lot with the algorithm. Leaving comments is a big deal. Liking is a big deal, and none of it costs anything. So, if you could do that, I very much appreciate it. Otherwise, I love you. Have a great day. Bye bye.